after it's all been said and done, do you think baseball did enough?
In terms of Alex Rodriguez?
All the players in general.
Well, first of all, I think they did what they could considering the circumstances. In the case of Alex Rodriguez, you know, I still think it's open for debate whether or not they were too excessive. I'm anxious to see their evidence. I heard what Bud Selig had to say. We'll see, because this is obviously something Alex Rodriguez is going to fight in court. I personally have no idea why Alex Rodriguez had that press conference yesterday. I mean, to me, what were you going to say? Clearly, you're going to appeal this case, and you're going to take it and put it in the hands of an arbitrator. You're going to present your case to them accordingly. You're not going to admit that you used performance-enhancing drugs, like the media directly asked him on at least 2 occasions yesterday afternoon. As far as I'm concerned, he could have had a statement, went out there and played, and then spoke at his locker afterwards while he was getting dressed to go back to his hotel. Really didn't make much sense to me, but everybody has to do what they believe is correct for themselves. In the end, when we ask the question as to whether or not baseball has done enough, that remains to be seen. Obviously, you have players that have been suspended. You have Bud Selig, and this is the one thing that's making me uncomfortable as I continue to watch this whole biogenesis issue unfold. A lot of these pundits don't realize they keep talking about the legacy of Bud Selig and how before he walks away from the game, you know, he wants to do X, Y, and Z. So my point is this about Bud Selig's legacy? I thought it's about what's in the best interest of Major League Baseball. Because this can't be about one man. This can't be about whatever personal crusade he's on. It's got to be about something bigger than that. Now, obviously, ridding the sport of performance-enhancing drugs, that would be a very, very big deal. And I'm certainly not trying to diminish the significance of that. But I do think it's important to point out that, again, this stuff has been going on for quite some time. And a lot of people benefited from it, not just in the game of baseball, but the fans of baseball. Matter of fact, you look out there and you ask some of these people, they wish the steroids never came about, that they were able to continue to watch these boys smack home runs out of the ballpark. I certainly don't agree with that, because as we studied and we've learned through testimony on Capitol Hill and beyond, that steroids has had a very, very detrimental effect on our society, and you don't want little kids growing up believing that this is the route to go. So obviously that supersedes anything that they're talking about here. But we will wait. A-Rod, to me, however, did not look great yesterday. There's no doubt about it. And it
looked great.
No, I'm talking
on the field or off the field?
Both.
Okay.
But especially off the field to me. But I didn't expect him to. Right now, bottom line is this. He did PEDs. He wouldn't admit it. All of this, like Mike Golick explained just a little while ago on Mike and Mike this morning, all of this is really about getting that 211-game suspension diminished, knocked down to as far as you can get it down, while having to admit that you used PEDs. That's what this comes down to me right now. So it's hard for me to decipher what to make of it.
Okay, then I will. You know, I have often defended Bud Selig on this show. I am not going to defend him today. I am extremely disappointed in what the commissioner did not do yesterday. I was left deflated at the end of the day yesterday, because I said many times on this show, building up to yesterday at 3 o'clock when the A-Rod announcement came down, that Bud Selig, in his final year of commissioner, had the chance to swing for the fences, to go for the lifetime ban that former Commissioner Fay Vincent has been publicly campaigning for Bud to try to pull off. He had a chance to make a profound, resounding statement, Stephen A., that said this will no longer be tolerated in the sport of baseball, to make a supreme example of Alex Rodriguez, and he did not. He took the safe, easy way out. My bottom line from yesterday is that now Alex Rodriguez shamefully will be allowed to play the last 52 games in pinstripes for the New York Yankees. 52 straight games he will finish this year playing, while this appeals process drags out until October or maybe even into November. And bottom line, this is my gut feeling, that this sentence will be so reduced at the end of the appeals process, I believe Alex Rodriguez will be back in pinstripes by the All-Star break next year. He will miss the first sort of half of the year. It's usually 90 to 95 games before the All-Star break hits. I believe Alex will be back. Is that enough punishment for what Bud Selig says in his statement he alleges were, quote, numerous forms of PED use from testosterone to HGH, human growth hormone, over, quote, multiple years, and that Alex also, on top of all that, quote unquote, did attempt to obstruct the investigation process. So Bud is saying, I've got this much evidence. Stop it. All you did yesterday was pull off one big PR stunt because you allowed this to go to the appeals process. You allowed Alex to sit there in that pregame press conference that he did, the media session, and as you said, plead the fifth. He didn't say he did it. He didn't say he didn't do it. He just said, I can't wait for the process to start, meaning he will take his phalanx of high-powered lawyers into an arbitrator, one Frederick Horowitz. I don't know much about Frederick. He has a great reputation, fair-minded man. And Stephen A., we will have the equivalent of sort of a casual court proceeding that will drag on for months as the high-powered phalanx of lawyers attempt to discredit the testimony of Tony Bosch of Biogenesis. And I believe that they will. So I believe yesterday was a lot of saber rattling on the part of the commissioner. It was one big PR stunt in an attempt to convict Alex in the court of public opinion.
And where have you been hearing that from for weeks in terms of what they do with these guys a lot of times? Like you said, saber rattling, convicting him in the court of public opinion.
So you throw out 211 games. Right. It's the worst since Pete Rose was banned in the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Baloney it is. It ain't done yet. We're just starting. It will wind up 90 games. You kept saying he shouldn't get any more than the 65 that Ryan Braun got. Right. Maybe because of the obstruction charges, maybe he'll get 90, but he won't get anywhere remotely resembling 211 games. That almost comes off as spite on the part of the commissioner over the fact that, remember, Alex on Friday night said, no, we haven't negotiated for 1 second, when in fact they had been negotiating. And then A-Rod's team requested one last meeting on Saturday. According to Kurt Schilling, that was to request 100 games, which would have been the sort of middle ground point here that he could have accepted with no appeal. No.
Well, there's a litany of things that I want to touch on based off of the points you made. Number one, A-Rod's camp still claims to this very day that there wasn't a negotiation because their mentality is that just because we're accepting phone calls with them giving us little things about what they're willing to offer us doesn't amount to a negotiation.
Semantics.
We've maintained our position all along. We weren't accepting a deal. We're not accepting a deal. And that's been their position, and they've been consistent with that. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about Bud Selig, all the saber rattling, all the stuff that he put out there in court of public opinion, mission accomplished, because if you heard the crowd in Chicago booing Alex Rodriguez vociferously, you know that he's already been indicted. You see the headlines. The New York Daily News had a headline where they were calling A-Rod a bum, okay? So if you look at it from that perspective and you see the level of vitriol aimed in his direction, clearly mission is accomplished.
For a day.
Well, I'm just saying, but this is the point that I'm trying to make when I say that we can't stop at just the players. We have to look at everybody, because what's their intent in all of this? Where were they complicit?
Yep.
Because this is where it gets a little bit ugly. Now, if you don't have any kind of failed drug test from Alex Rodriguez, no pictures of him, you know, receiving PEDs or anything like that, you know what this comes down to? What this comes down to is his word against this dude, Anthony Bosch, who clearly has a checkered past.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, along with his associate who has a checkered past, and the list goes on and on. Now, that is not to absolve Alex Rodriguez from anything. Everybody in their grandmama believes that that man used PEDs, especially after his press conference yesterday. But in the end, what it comes down to, and what it has been about all along, is that Major League Baseball for months have been leaking out information alluding to an impending lifetime ban. So in reality, that's where Alex Rodriguez got his backup. If you had sat there and tried to treat him like a first-time offender, which is what he should have been treated as, because it's not like you should be you should be credited with stuff that you admitted to before your joint drug policy was instituted, okay, then you might have had a different ball game. But in the end, here's what it comes down to. And we're not going to get into all the legalese and everything like that, Skip, but it's important to point this out. I said this yesterday. I'm going to allude to it again. NFL, NBA, NHL, places like that, they have labor antitrust exemptions. Baseball has a complete antitrust exemption. Baseball enjoys and has enjoyed a very privileged position in the world of business and sports, collaborating with one another since the 20s, for crying out loud. You know what? They're America's national pastime. They're the dudes that can show up on Capitol Hill being subpoenaed for performance-enhancing drug use and have congressional figures asking for their autographs and taking pictures in the back room. That kind of stuff, those privileged positions that they've enjoyed, they didn't want to jeopardize. Because if he had instituted the lifetime ban, then obviously this is not a case for the arbitrator. This is a case for federal court. This is a case for federal court.
Right.
So if your information was that big time, if it was that solid, if it was that concrete, Bud Selig, and all of your associates with Major League Baseball, how come you didn't push for it to go that route so you could end up in federal court?
That's all I've been saying.
You didn't do it because you were afraid that you could possibly lose, period.
Hey, if you got the goods, if you've got stand-up-in-court evidence on Alex Rodriguez, both PED use, multiple years, and obstruction of justice, go to court. Go for the throat. Go for the lifetime ban.
That's right.
Because, hey, Alex could get exposed in federal court, too, right?
Yeah, but
he could get all-time shame.
And he would be subpoenaed.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, he'd have to give sworn testimony under oath, which means he couldn't lie because it would be perjury, and you're talking about potential jail time. So he certainly wouldn't do that. The point that I'm trying to make to you, though, is that they didn't push this. They didn't push this. It wasn't just because of Alex Rodriguez and the preponderance of evidence they may have had against him. It's because they didn't want to jeopardize their privileged position. So if we have that mentality and we're willing to embrace and accept that as reality, Skip, then it harkens us back to my accusations of them being complicit in the whole steroids era, because you were living fat and happy with no joint drug policy implemented, and you were in a position where the long balls were flying out of the park, baseball was revitalized and rejuvenated. You benefit off of that, used a lot of people even before Alex Rodriguez to do it, and now you want to change course.
So my final fear is that you have been correct all along, that Alex Rodriguez will not end up with many more games than Ron originally got, 65 games. I'm going to say 80 to 90 games, because this arbitrator, fair-minded man, Frederick Horowitz, is going to review the evidence, and he's going to say, basically, Stephen A. is right. I can't make a case here. I can't see a case that's beyond what Ryan Braun got for what Alex's past has been as far as failed drug tests.